In the dead of night, under a sky ripped open by thunder and lashed by relentless rain, a lone rancher named Elias trudged through the mud-slicked fields of his sprawling Montana property, his lantern swinging like a feeble heartbeat against the storm's fury. The wind howled like a wounded beast, and that's when he heard it, a faint, desperate cry slicing through the chaos, not quite human, not entirely animal, but raw with the kind of pain that clenches the soul. There, tangled in barbed wire at the edge of his fence line, lay a skeletal horse, its coat matted with blood and filth, eyes wide with terror as lightning illuminated its emaciated frame. The animal thrashed weakly, its hooves scraping the earth in futile protest, and in that moment, as Elias knelt closer, he swore he saw a plea in those glassy eyes, a silent vow etched in suffering: "Save me. I swear I'll serve you forever." The horse's ribs heaved with labored breaths, its body bearing the scars of neglect and abuse from some distant, forgotten owner who had cast it aside like yesterday's refuse. If you believe in kindness and second chances, hit that like button, drop a comment below sharing your own story of compassion, share this video with someone who needs a reminder of humanity's light, and subscribe to Moments of Love for more tales that warm the heart and stir the spirit. Elias had always been a man of the land, hardened by years of isolation on his ranch, where the endless horizon met the unyielding demands of survival. Widowed young after a tragic accident that claimed his wife during a brutal winter, he had buried his grief in the rhythm of daily chores, tending cattle, mending fences, and wrestling with the fickle whims of nature. The ranch was his fortress, a place where emotions were as scarce as rain in drought season, and vulnerability was a luxury he couldn't afford. But that night, as the storm raged on, something in the horse's eyes pierced through his armored heart, reminding him of his own long-buried loneliness. The animal was a mare, he realized upon closer inspection, her once majestic black coat now dulled to a ghostly gray, her legs twisted from the wire's cruel embrace. She had clearly wandered far, perhaps escaping a fate worse than death at a nearby auction yard where unwanted horses were sold for slaughter. Elias's hands, calloused from rope and rain, trembled as he worked to free her, the barbs tearing into his own flesh, but he persisted, whispering soothing words that the wind stole away. By dawn, as the storm subsided to a misty drizzle, he had carried her broken form to the barn on a makeshift sled, her weight feather light from starvation, and there, in the dim light of the stable, he faced the first of many challenges, deciding if saving her was an act of mercy or folly. The days that followed blurred into a grueling test of will, as Elias grappled with the mare's dire condition, her body a battlefield of infections and frailty. He named her Shadow, for the way she seemed to cling to the edges of life like a fading silhouette at dusk. Veterinary calls were out of the question at first, his finances were stretched thin after a poor calving season, and the nearest clinic was hours away over treacherous roads. Instead, he drew on old rancher wisdom, mixing poultices from herbs gathered in the wild, force-feeding her gruel through a tube when she was too weak to stand. Shadow's struggles mirrored his own inner turmoil. She would rally one moment, her nostrils flaring with a spark of defiance, only to collapse the next, her breaths shallow and ragged. Elias spent sleepless nights by her side, the barn's hay-scented air thick with the metallic tang of blood and the quiet drip of IV fluids he rigged from scavenged supplies. Memories haunted him during those vigils, recollections of his wife's final days, her pale face in the hospital bed, begging him to let her go, but he had fought then as he fought now, unwilling to surrender to loss. The ranch hands, a rough crew of seasonal workers, whispered among themselves, calling his efforts a waste, predicting the mare would die and drag him down with her. Yet Elias persisted, his isolation deepening as he shunned their company, pouring his unspoken sorrows into this one act of redemption, feeling for the first time in years a fragile thread of connection to something beyond his solitary existence. As weeks turned to months, Shadow's recovery became a slow, arduous dance with hope, marked by setbacks that tested Elias's resolve to its breaking point. One bitter morning, an infection flared in her wounded leg, swelling it to twice its size, and she lay listless, her eyes dulled by fever. Elias, his face etched with exhaustion, contemplated the rifle in the corner of the barn, the merciful end that ranch life often demanded. But as he approached, Shadow lifted her head ever so slightly, her gaze locking onto his with that same pleading intensity from the storm-swept night, as if renewing her silent oath. It was then that doubt crept in, not just about her survival, but about his own capacity for change. The ranch itself suffered under his divided attention, fences went unrepaired, cattle strayed, and debts mounted like gathering clouds. Neighbors gossiped in town, painting him as a fool obsessed with a worthless beast, while his estranged brother called from the city, urging him to sell the land and move on from his ghost-ridden life. Elias's hands, once steady, now shook with fatigue as he administered antibiotics smuggled from a sympathetic feed store owner, and in the quiet hours, he found himself confessing to Shadow the pains he had never voiced, the guilt over his wife's death, the regret of a childless marriage, the fear that his heart had turned to stone. Each small victory, Shadow's first tentative steps, the gradual filling out of her frame, ignited a flicker of warmth in him, but the path was fraught with peril, every gain shadowed by the threat of reversal. The turning point came on a crisp autumn day, when the golden leaves whispered secrets through the valley, and Shadow, now stronger but still scarred, faced her greatest trial yet. A pack of coyotes, drawn by the scent of vulnerability, circled the ranch under the cover of twilight, their yips echoing like mocking laughter. Elias, alerted by the unrest among his cattle, grabbed his shotgun and rushed out, only to find Shadow breaking free from her stall in a surge of instinctual fury. Limping but unyielding, she charged into the fray, her hooves thundering against the earth as she positioned herself between the predators and a cluster of newborn calves. The scene unfolded like a fever dream, Shadow rearing up, her whinnies piercing the air, driving the coyotes back with a ferocity born of gratitude and loyalty. Elias fired warning shots, scattering the pack, but it was Shadow's stand that saved the herd, her body trembling from the effort yet unbroken. In that moment, as he led her back to the barn, bandaging fresh scrapes, Elias realized the depth of her transformation, and his own. She had not just survived, she had chosen to serve, repaying his kindness with a devotion that mended the fractures in his soul. Word spread through the tight-knit community, tales of the miracle mare, who had risen from the brink, and what the rancher did next shocked everyone. He refused lucrative offers to sell her, instead converting part of his land into a sanctuary for abused animals, funding it by selling off non-essential acres. It was a radical shift for a man once defined by self-preservation, a declaration that vulnerability could be strength, and second chances were worth the risk. As winter's first snow blanketed the ranch in quiet purity, Elias and Shadow forged a bond that reshaped their world, her presence a constant reminder that even the most broken spirits could heal and give back tenfold. The sanctuary grew, drawing volunteers and donations, turning the once lonely outpost into a beacon of hope where stories of redemption unfolded daily. Elias, no longer the reclusive widower, found purpose in guiding others through their own struggles, his heart thawed by the mare who had sworn her eternal service in silence. Shadow thrived, her coat gleaming like polished obsidian, her steps sure and proud as she patrolled the fields, a living testament to resilience. Their journey, fraught with pain and perseverance, inspired all who heard it, proving that in the face of despair, a single act of compassion could ripple outward, changing lives forever. If this story has touched your heart, as it has mine in sharing it, please like, comment with your thoughts on what kindness means to you, share it far and wide, and subscribe to Moments of Love to keep the flame of empathy alive. And before we end, a special request: comment your favorite line from this story below, it could be the spark that inspires our next tale.